Welcome to our live Dat Chat podcast here at NOLA.com. Larry Holder, Jeff Duncan here with you at the Saints facility as we are a couple hours removed from the Saints wrapping up week 2 of the OTAs. It's the second time the media has been able to check out practice. And Jeff, you can't make big-time impressions. We give that disclaimer through this time of the year, whether it's OTAs or whether we get to see the 3 minicamp practices in a couple of weeks. But you do have some small takeaways from this, and to me, and I think one of the things you took away from, at least in the locker room, because look, Mark Ingram's been hurt. I think on Instagram he put something about his knees a little messed up. Obviously nothing serious, but no need to press the issue. But you look at who's been playing running back. Obviously it's Adrian Peterson, and some of the people in the locker room, they are just starstruck, and not just starstruck, but awestruck by his presence, what he can do. And to me, the last couple of weeks, not even on the field, the last couple of weeks, it seems like there's been an overriding excitement around him coming from within the team, not just, say, exterior people just excited about the name.
Look, I think you and I both probably came in skeptical or cynical of what Adrian Peterson could bring to the table for a number of reasons. I mean, he's coming off some injuries. He was not very productive in Minnesota last year. I know he was playing behind a bad offensive line, but the fact that there was not much of a market for him sort of gave me a little bit of pause as to how much he had left, because you know every team in the league that needed a running back was probably looking at film of him, and there just wasn't a whole lot of market for him. But I've been taken aback by what we're hearing from players and teammates in the locker room about him. You're right. Starstruck, awestruck are perfect words to describe. We're talking about high-level players, guys like Kenny Vaccaro, Taron Armstead, Delvin Breaux.
Drew Brees, obviously. He speaks highly of everyone, but he certainly speaks highly of Adrian Peterson.
Just going out of their way, talking about what this guy looks like so far. And, you know, it's hard for us, frankly, to really gauge that sometimes. They all look like they're in pretty good shape, so it's hard for us. But when you hear peers talking about someone the way they're talking about Adrian Peterson, that's the column I'm actually going to write a little bit later today for tomorrow. I didn't go in the locker room looking for that. It just kind of emerged out of conversations with different players. It was pretty startling to hear some of the comments today. So I think if you're a Saints fan, you should be excited by what the potential is. Now, how long he can hold up at that age and can he avoid injury, I don't know, but early impressions are very favorable.
I'm going to be the downer a little bit. Could he be awesome? Sure. But this is the time of year where we hear everyone's awesome. Everyone's great. Things are going along. So even though we're hearing all this hype, it's hype right now. We don't know what's going to occur on the field. We don't know what when he's going up against people in pads, what's going to happen there. But there is an unquestionable excitement, and so much so it's I don't know. I forget if we brought this up last week because we talked a lot about Adrian Peterson last week, but it's almost like the more Mark Ingram isn't on the field and the more Adrian Peterson's on the field, the team sees Adrian Peterson and gets a little more excited. I don't know if I'm reading too much into that, but you know, it's something to where they see. No one's ever questioned Adrian Peterson's work ethic. No one's ever questioned Adrian Peterson's talent. There's been other questions, rightfully so, considering what happened with him off the field a couple of years ago, and now injury-wise. But when he's good, no one's ever really questioned that. And so I can understand the level of excitement that this team's building around. But still, like I said, he's still trying to learn his way. And we haven't really talked to him outside of a conference call yet this offseason. So I'm curious to see. We'll probably get him in by the time the offseason program, early offseason program's done, and we'll have our thoughts on his thoughts. But just from his initial thoughts when we talked to him via conference call, he seems as confident as ever. And it seems like that's being portrayed to his teammates, and his teammates are way bought in with this guy.
What's the Peyton's phrase? Don't eat the cheese.
Yes.
And I mean, this is the time of year when everybody's the cheese factory is working
everywhere.
overtime.
Right.
You just read around the league, everybody is raving over their own team. Optimism knows no bounds. So you're right to be cautious this time of year. But I will just say it's pretty eye opening to hear what we're hearing from players. It's not reporters saying this; it's players, and you don't hear that kind of comment from a lot of players about a teammate the way they're talking about Adrian Peterson. So, other impressions today, you took the offense, I took the defense. I thought Drew Brees and Ted Ginn had some nice connections today.
Absolutely. Outside of who's there and who's not, and was Ted Ginn. I mean, that was really kind of the story of the day. And it's Ted Ginn being Ted Ginn. He can make the incredible, and then he can have a drop where you're like, how does that happen?
On the easiest catch.
On an easiest catch, but he can make the incredible incredible. And a couple times today, Ted Ginn went deep, 1 in 7-on-7, 1 in team drills, both on P.J. Williams. He beat P.J. both times. Drew Brees hit Ted Ginn perfectly. Oh, what happened to Ted Ginn's going to be so fast, Drew Brees can't throw it to him. Wrong, of course. He's pinpoint accurate. And also on a deep out route, Drew Brees hit Ted Ginn on a team. Chase Daniel threw a dart to Ted Ginn, who did a dig route and cut across the middle, and it was a perfect play. And but then there was the drop where it's third down, and he's just across the middle, wide open on a crossing route, and he drops it. And it's funny, we were standing with Bobby Hebert and Deuce McAllister watching practice, and Deuce said it perfectly, and I think this is going to have to be the way the Saints fans look at it. Take the big plays all you want. You're going to have to live with the drops, but if you can get several big plays, and if he drops one, oh well, take the big plays, and that's what Ted Ginn's going to be with this team.
Well, yeah, and the thing that stood out to me, obviously making those plays, is that he doesn't look like he's lost a step. I mean, he's 32 years old. And he looks like a track athlete out there. And I know he was a great track athlete, I think, at Ohio State.
Right.
But he still has the burners and the jets, and they're going to need that because they don't really have that other aspect in the offense without Brandon Cooks. He's that guy right now, and he's going to have to be that deep threat to keep defenses honest because that's not really Mike Thomas's game. Willie Snead, that's not his game. So again, showing an early connection with Drew Brees is a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. And Drew Brees spoke for about 7 or 8 minutes. He was in a rush. I guess he had something to do. I don't know. But he did stop and talk with the media for a little while. And, of course, spoke very highly, said he has basically the utmost confidence in Ted Ginn and can't disagree with him when he sees it today. I mean, I'm sure Drew knows Ted's game. He understands that he can make the big, deep catches, and then at times – you won't have Ted Ginn be consistent, and he might have an easy ball that's dropped. And he could even beat a guy deep and be wide open and drop a pass. But that's you're not going to shake that at this point in your career. So you just kind of have to know what he brings. And look, the Saints have a defined role for him. It's not like they need to go out and recreate the wheel. They just have to go back to an original wheel, and it's Devery Henderson. And that's who this is. And Ted Ginn may be faster than Devery. And
like he is.
Yeah, and so it's something. And we bring it up. Ted Ginn is going to play a role in special teams, and Devery did not present that. So Ted Ginn kind of brings more to the table, actually.
Yeah, and I think it should be noted today that both those plays, I mean, PJ wasn't beat that bad. I mean, it was just great pinpoint accuracy, like you said.
Maybe one of the passes.
One of them he got
I think in
behind
7-on-7, I think he got beat.
Right.
But in the team drill, it wasn't a bad beat, but it was still Ted Ginn can show what he can do.
Yeah. It's just one of those classic Drew Brees perfect timing passes and right over the right shoulder. It made it easy for Ginn. But that stood out to me today that you're seeing early on Ginn being a factor in this offense, which is a huge sign because they're missing some pieces out there right now. There's some guys that aren't here. Well, I guess we should talk about that. I mean, the most conspicuous absence is Nick Fairley, and we should tell, I guess, our listeners that Sean Payton and a number of Saints executives and I think even owners were not at practice today because of Cortez Kennedy's funeral in Orlando. So we didn't get to talk to Sean Payton today, but Nick Fairley being absent, I think it's got to be a little eyebrow raising because it's the second week in a row that he hasn't been out there.
And we don't know if he's been around at all, honestly. Everyone's kind of being tight-lipped, which makes you kind of wonder what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
The guy gets a contract, and we haven't seen him in OTAs. And, look, after all, they are voluntary, but people know it's not really voluntary. They want you there or it's frowned upon.
Well, everybody else is out here pretty much.
Right, exactly. And even if they are hurt, there's still a lot of them are still around.
Right.
So I do think that one is a bit conspicuous, and I'm totally changing thought. We'll get back to it, but our own Herbie Teope reporting that the Saints have finally signed or had an agreement to terms with one of their rookies, third-round pick Trey Hendrickson. Has his deal done. Deal's worth a maximum of $3 million, including a signing bonus. And you got to remember, today's June 1st. They get $7 million in cap room from releasing Jarris Byrd, making him a June 1st designation. So you figured once that happened, it's going to kick in all the rookies. So Hendrickson is the first to sign. I'm sure it'll be a domino effect going forward. All these guys are here. All these rookies are here working.
Yeah, and these rookie deals are really just rubber stamp deals now with the new CBA and the rookie pay scale structure. They're kind of slotted in. It's so much easier than the old days. I can remember, when we were both covering the beat back in the days before this, some protracted holdouts between rookies. I remember there was a number of years when I covered the team when Jim Haslett was the head coach that the first-round draft pick didn't even make it to camp. I mean, we'd go a week, and every day you were trying to find out what was going on with the
Joey Bosa is the extreme rarity these days.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that doesn't go on anymore, so there's probably going to be no surprises here, I would anticipate, with any of the rookies. But I do think, getting back to Fairley a little bit, if he were another player, I would have less concern, but this is a guy that, let's face it, has had some questions in the past, and the fact that no one's talking the way no one's talking just kind of raises my eyebrows a little bit.
Rightfully so. And we don't know what's going on, and it's OTAs, so do you want to overreact? No, but we're just stating what it is, and it leads you down a path that you don't want to take, but you've been given reasons in the past to take and think, what's going on here?
Right.
And it would be the same thing if, say, Jarris Byrd was still on the team and he's not practicing. You're like, here we are again. It might not be, anything out of the ordinary, but it might, he's hurt again or something like that.
Right.
So it's something that we're going to have to keep monitoring, and I'm curious to see when or if he gets back. I mean, he's got to get back here by minicamp. That's the thing. I mean, that's mandatory.
Yeah.
They got one more week of OTAs next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then the following week is mandatory 3 days, and those practices should be open. And actually, that's one of the questions from UGU Mara asking about the mandatory minicamp. 13th through the 15th, barring weather, they should be open to the public. So you'll be able to get to see a little bit. And, if you're not there for those, you're fine. But we don't know if it's excused. We don't know if he's hurt. We don't know if he's dealing with something. We don't know. And I think that's just going to be a little mini mystery this offseason.
Well, obviously, next week when Sean Payton is back and addresses the media, if Nick Fairley is not here, I'm sure that's going to be a huge point.
Should be number one question.
Right. It'll be out there because they just gave him a big contract, and they're counting on him along with Sheldon Rankins to provide interior pass rush. And I would say today in some of the team drills, I thought some of the pass rush, it's almost impossible to evaluate pass rush when you're in non-contact, non-padded practices. But they were getting after Breeze a little bit, forcing him to get rid of the ball quickly. Alex Okafor, who we talked to afterward, was in there at one point, would have had a sack. And Obum Gwacham also put pressure on him. And then there were a couple of cornerback, defensive back blitzes. Damian Swan got into the backfield on Chase Daniel, and I believe it was one of the other DBs, but those were on the quarterback. I mean, they've got to pick those up when they have that kind of pressure. But it's good to see that early on, and we had a chance to talk to Alex Okafor afterward and Kenny Vaccaro, who is his best friend and helped recruit him here to New Orleans. And they're both excited about what he can do. They said that he'll be used differently here than he was in Arizona. He's not going to be asked to drop back in pass coverage. He's basically just going to be used to get after the quarterback, which is what this team needs. And I think he's a critical factor for them if they want to make the jump to become a top defense.
Yeah, the other DB I think you were referring to, and it was on a team drill. It was Chris Banjo came around the edge.
Yes.
And had a free shot at Chase Daniel and would have drilled him if it was
no
a real
one
game.
him.
No one. I don't even think – and I think that's more on Chase Daniel. It's like it was coming from his right side, so he would have seen him, should have seen him. It did not see it, and it was a clear shot he could have taken.
Bobby Hebert was standing with us and said, that's on the quarterback, and he said, it comes into your open side where you're right in front of your face. You've got to see that as a quarterback. They were throwing some stuff at him. Dennis Allen was opening up the defensive playbook, coming after him in these. And a lot of what we saw today was nickel package work. So we saw a lot of sub packages. And the thing that stood out to me on defense was the fact that now I know Von Bell's not out there because it looks like he's got something on his wrist or his hand, but he didn't practice.
Yeah, he was in the locker room, but he did not practice. So you saw Marcus Williams in the base as a safety. And so,
that's what stood out to me. When they were in their 5 DB nickel defense, 2 of them were rookies, Marshawn Lattimore at corner and Marcus Williams. So you got these 2 rookies getting right in the mix. And I think they're going to be in the mix. I don't think they're going to have training wheels on these young guys. I think they're counting on both of them to be on the field early and often this year because they think they've got that kind of talent. And talking to some of the other DBs, they know that they're going to make mistakes and there's going to be some growing pains, but they like the way both of them look. The thing that stands out to me about Marcus Williams is he's very athletic. I mean, the guys can really jump. He had an incredible couple leaps today, great range. I don't know if he's going to be in the right place at the right time all the time, especially when they get into live games, but just his athletic ability and range stand out. Those are the kind of things you can judge right now when they're not in pads.
Well, he's known for his A, book smarts, and B, football smarts. Mm-hmm. That's one of the big things. It almost every time we bring him up, I wonder why he wasn't drafted higher. He seems like he's got all the characteristics. He's got the statistics, measurables, smarts. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah, what's missing?
I don't.
They played at a high level. I mean,
Utah,
Pac-10.
Right.
I'm with you on that, and I can see why they drafted him because the way they're playing back there on the back end, that was actually he's almost like a starter in a way.
Yeah, he broke up a pass. Who was it to?
I think it was Coleman.
Deep ball to Coleman, and it was right at the beginning of practice. You're like, whoa, look at this, and it was Marcus Williams. Like, oh, that's what he's there for, and that's what he's known to be.
Yeah, Kenny Vaccaro said, look, he's got a nose for the ball, and even when he's not there breaking up the pass, he's right there. And that's a good sign early on, and I think it's a good sign that they're throwing these guys out there. Even Alex Anzalone is getting a lot of work in their sub-packages at linebacker, and he's going to get every, I think, chance to show he can try to defend these tight ends and running backs out of the backfield and passing situations. Now, he's not with the ones, but he's getting early work with the twos, and that's been a problem for this team for a number of years, being able to stop tight ends and running backs. And it's obviously something they're trying to solve.
Yeah, they were shifting around linebackers, and it's, again, don't overreact, but Anzalone was on defense when they were going up against Drew Brees in that offense. Is he with the ones in that group? I'd say no, but the defensive line, that was the ones. You had ones at cornerback and then safety. But they were mixing and matching the linebackers today, I could tell you.
Subbing them in quickly.
Right, subbing them in quickly, and you saw going against the Drew Brees-led offense. You saw Stephon Anthony and Craig Robertson playing linebacker, Anzalone in there, Stupar in there. And then when you'd switch over with the twos, you saw Ellerbe and Klein. Now, for my judgment, Ellerbe and Klein are the ones, and they're just mixing and matching. But they need to see what these guys are capable of, specifically Anthony, specifically Anzalone.
Yeah, I think that's what Mike Nolan is just getting. Look, you got to remember he's a first-year coach here. He's wanting to get as many varied looks as he can at these different linebackers, and so he's going to give these guys a shot. I mean, Stephon Anthony, I'm sure, is going to get a fresh start with Mike Nolan. And, he was out there, you're right, with the in the nickel package with Craig Robertson a lot, which surprised me because that's not Anthony's strength.
You would assume he's being the middle linebacker at that point. I mean, none of them had the green dot on their helmet, but where he was lining up was the same spot where, say, A.J. Clown was lining up when he was in there with Ellerby. So you just assume, okay, they're trying to give him a shot to be a middle again.
Yeah. Now, one play that stood out to me, and you probably noted it in your observations, I don't know, was the really nice connection between Breeze and Alvin Kamara, the rookie running back from Tennessee. Take me through that because I can't remember who he beat on that play, but it was a standout play.
Yeah, it was, and none of us recalled if it was a wheel route out of the backfield or whether he was lined up as a receiver. Regardless, it was one of those routes down the sideline, and he beat Craig Robertson, and Marcus Williams was chasing, couldn't get there, and Drew Brees, perfection, right on the money, and with Kamara's ability to catch the football, the route, great route, easy catching the football. It's natural. It looks natural. And, yeah, Kamara was one of the other speedsters because I mentioned a bunch of speed. We were watching Ginn and we were watching Kamara, and those two guys really, of the skill positions, stood out today. Also, yes, it's a running play and you don't have pads on, but Kamara looked really good on one carry, kind of zigzagged his way through, got through a couple layers of defense and kind of took off. And that's something you want to see from him as, say, the third down back. So, yeah, Kamara looked really good, and Drew Brees was asking about him after practice, and he's saying, look, Kamara is learning every day, and it's just like Ginn. The blueprint is there already. Years of tape. All these guys need to do is go watch. Here's what Devery Henderson did. Here's what Reggie Bush did. Here's what Darren Sproles did. These are your rules.
Yeah.
And this is what we're going to do.
And I think Kamara is going to be in that role. I know that he's built a little differently than Bush and Sproles. He's a little bit bigger and more of a regular running back build, but he's definitely the guy. He's working in that nickel offense already. So he's going to get a lot of opportunity, and we said it last time, but draft him if you have a fantasy football team because I think he's going to have a big year if he can stay healthy. And certainly he's going to get the opportunity, if he can stay healthy to produce because this offense seemingly has almost everything that it's always had now in those different roles. They've filled them all, especially with Ginn now filling that deep threat that we were kind of questioning, I think, before the season.
Absolutely. And I usually do this at the beginning, and I didn't. So how to get involved in the show. We want to take your questions. Unfortunately, there's always some sort of meltdown on either my end. Typically, the last several weeks it's been on my end. I did something with the original post. There were a lot of comments. Somehow I changed the date to move it up to today, and it zapped them all away. And it's a good thing there was an OTA today because otherwise we'd just be making stuff off the top of our head. But please jump in there, ask your question in our NOLA.com comment section. We'll get to as many as we can. And then Jeff will be monitoring the Mixler feed. Always get some good questions out of there. Mentioned Yuji Umar. had a question about the camp dates, but also had a question about some of the people who were practicing today and saying, did I read correctly that Kikaha and Teo were practicing today? That seems like a good sign. However, it also seems like a slew of guys weren't practicing. Kikaha was on the field doing some individual stuff, and Teo was actually getting in and being like the third team middle linebacker. So it's like they're easing him in, and he did some, I think it was in 7-on-7s. It might have been in team, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he didn't do that at all last week.
Right. So he's actually getting in there and doing stuff, obviously a good sign.
Yeah, and Teo, I think they're just easing him back in, like you said, letting him get his feet wet. And it's hard to judge where he's going to fit into the equation until probably training camp.
Sure.
I'm sure then he'll be full go and we'll be able to work in. But it sounds to me, just when we talked to him last week, that he's going to work in the middle and start out in the middle, and then maybe he could be on the weak side or the strong side. He said he's kind of going to try to learn all those positions. And that's the interesting thing about the linebacker corps is they've got a bunch of guys that can play different spots. And I think they're going to get a chance because I don't think they know who their best three are right now.
Right. I think you look at Teo, you look at Klein. I'm guessing they're looking at Stephon Anthony. We know Craig Robertson in a pinch. If they had to do it, they could do it. So you got a bunch of candidates at middle linebacker. And then I don't know how much strong side linebacker Teo's played. I don't know how much weak side linebacker he's played, or Klein. Because, let's be frank, if Ellerbe gets hurt, it's like the sun and the moon. You know,
What do you mean if?
Exactly, that's right. The sun comes out and the moon comes out, and typically it happens.
Death, taxes, and Donnell Ellerbe on the exercise bike.
Boy, that's a Larry comment if I heard that one. But, yeah, it's you got to make sure someone can play the weak. Craig Robertson is certainly a weak side linebacker, but and it doesn't seem like you're going to see much strong side linebacker play. I mean, it's kind of a dying breed in this day and age as NFL, rightfully so, because of all the passing you got to deal with. But yeah, it's something to where every linebacker should prepare themselves, probably outside of Ellerbe. Every linebacker's got to prepare themselves to be able to potentially play any spot.
Wouldn't you say that I would bet right now that Marcus Williams will play more snaps than the third linebacker on this team this year?
Easily.
No question.
Easily.
He's going to be on the field more because they're going to be facing so many three receiver sets, especially in this division too with the quarterback play that they have. I want to ask you this. This is from William Smith in the Mixler feed, asking about Kobe Fleener, a guy that we get asked about a lot. Do we think he can make a jump this year? He thinks that's a key to the offense, which is a good point. When they've had really dynamic offenses, they've had really strong tight end play. I don't know. I think kind of what you see is what you get with Kobe Fleener. I'm not counting him out, but I don't think he's going to be the next Jimmy Graham.
No, I don't think so. I don't think he's going to be the next Ben Watson, honestly, to me. And it's a conversation, you talk on the sidelines when you're watching practice with some, peers. And it seems like to me the Saints are trying to do what they can to mimic either 2009 or 2011. And the more I think about it, it's more of 2009 because they didn't have this great tight end. Was Shockey solid? Yes. But was Ben Watson better than Shockey? Yes. Was Jimmy Graham? Of course. So it wasn't like he was some major phase in the offense. And they had the similar style of receiving core that they've now assembled in 9, similar style of running backs that they've assembled now, as in like in 09. So I think they're trying to do that. Mm-hmm. And it worked then. I mean, obviously we've got to see if it works now. I just don't think Kobe Fleener is going to be catching 80 balls or even 60 balls and 800, 900 yards. I just don't anticipate that because I think we're going to see a jump in receptions from the running back standpoint as far as Kamara. I think that counteracts what maybe you're doing at tight end. And it's different than what they were doing in 11 because Sproles caught a ton, Jimmy Graham caught a ton. I don't think you're going to see that with this offense.
I don't either, and I think they probably will run the ball a little more just because they've got such good backs and such depth. I don't think they're going to turn into the, ground and pound. But I think going back to what you said, they're going to look a little more like 2009 than 11, where they really the runs were little swing passes to Darren Sproles and stuff out in the flat. Those were the runs. I think they're going to go more along the lines of those days when they had Deuce and Reggie and Pierre, or had Mike Bell in that mix. And there'll be a little more balance, I think. And it makes sense because they've got such good backs to utilize out of the backfield that tight end, I think, is going to end up being kind of the least important perimeter player on this offense.
And right now, Josh Hill still isn't practicing. To me, it doesn't seem like he's going to be practicing at all until training camp. That would be my guess.
Right.
Just gauging where he is. The Who Man's practicing. We saw Clay Harbor, like you said, the Gretna subdivision, Clay Harbor. And we saw John Phillips getting a little bit of ones action, and all of these guys have seen and played in the NFL. So it's not like you've got these majorly receiver tight ends that you're looking at, and you're like I said, we've said it a bunch of times already. We've shifted to they're bringing back. It's like Back to the Future. They're trying to go back there, and it's not like you're going back to the Stone Ages. I mean, you're going back to offenses that were awesome and still are extremely viable in the NFL. And I just think that they feel like they have the same pieces that works. And look, that 2009 offense would be incredible in 2017. It's not like the game has changed much, at least offensively, since then. That would both of those teams would be productive.
I'll tell you a good sign today, and a good, I think, just fun to talk to Terran Armstead. We haven't talked to him very much. Him coming off that injury-riddled season, and he looked great. He looks great out there. That's a great sign for the Saints offensive line. I mean, he's definitely their anchor on the left side, and he talked a lot about Adrian Peterson, as so many of the offensive linemen have. But I think once they get Unger back, if and when they get him back, they've got the makings of one of their best lines because Warford, I think, fills that role. And we had a chance to talk to Larry Warford today for the first time, and he was an impressive guy, very smart and very funny, talking to him about how he's starstruck. He said being here, it's weird. He's coming from a playoff team.
Let's say Calvin Johnson and Matt Stafford didn't get it done.
He was just saying that Drew Brees and Adrian Peterson, he has to pinch himself a little bit being in the same locker room with them. But he talked a little bit today about the transition of having to work with a new right tackle. We've all talked to Streif in the past about the connection he had with Jari Evans because they played together so much. Well, that's something that they're going to have to work through, and that's why he's going to be out there every snap I think he can get with Zach Streif.
Yeah, but you mentioned Terran Armstead, and to me, I put in my offensive observations right before we came on the air. I said, I don't care what happened on the field. Ted Ginn could have 10 catches, 7,000 yards. I don't care. The fact that Terran Armstead is out here working end of May, beginning of June, and he's going through all this is a very good sign for the Saints. If he wasn't ready to go, you don't put him out there, period. It wouldn't be the case. He didn't work a ton when we saw the OTA last Thursday. He was in there, individuals, team drills. He didn't take every team drill snap, but he was in every time they had some. He might have taken maybe a couple snaps off. I think Bryce Harris. Not too much fantasy baseball in my mind, Jeff. Bryce Harris took a couple of snaps there. But, yeah, the fact that he was in there, and in media world, he walked into the locker room. I don't know if he anticipated speaking. He saw the media crowd come to him. He said, all right, let's just go to my locker room. Right. So he spoke. That's a good sign that he's talking – and he's feeling good. Yeah,
he looks good too. I mean, he looks he's just a massive guy. You forget how big some of these guys are. Mm-hmm. I know that sounds silly after all these years, but he's a big dude. And to be able to run and be as agile as he is pretty remarkable. And he's going to be critical for this offense. If they get a full 16-game season out of him, that's a boon. That's lagniappe because they haven't had that the last couple of years. And like we said, if they get Unger back, suddenly this offensive line, I think, is going to rank among the best in the league. It might not be at the top, but it's going to be among the top 10 probably for sure because you really don't have any huge holes there except I guess the big question mark would be is Andres Pete, can he take the next step?
Well, that and then Unger. We need to see his health for sure. But yeah, I think Andres Pete, I haven't seen anything. Look, it's 2 practices. Why am I even talking like this? I know. But it seems like he's kind of become that role, and he's become comfortable in that role. And I think it was, I don't know, a couple months ago, maybe when Sean Payton mentioned, might have been at the owners' meeting, when Sean Payton said it was the fact that Andres Pete has his left hand on the ground and then made himself feel more comfortable, that has made a difference, and that's something that they learned.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing, but yeah, it's...
But in other words, I think he's staying at guard.
Well, you don't go draft another tackle if you don't think he's going to be a guard. Look, Ryan Ramczyk, he's not practicing yet. He's going to be the 6th offensive lineman this year, barring any injury. Zach Streif, we know he's going to be the starter until further notice. Mm-hmm. And you could bomb the pick out, but if Zach Streif's good enough to play and Ryan Ramczyk, you think he's a first-round talent, he's like your 6th guy, I think you're in good shape up front.
Yeah, no, I think it's potentially the best line they've had since those dominant lines they had during the Super Bowl run in 2010 and 11 with Nix and John Goodwin and Stinchcomb and that group. I mean, they really was not a weak link. I think at one time all those guys had made some kind of Pro Bowl at some time in their career. I'm not sure that this group has that quite high of ceiling, but there's no weak spots there. And, you can't say that around the NFL. We were talking to Abear and Deuce today about that at practice. I mean, offensive line is just hard to find. It's hard to find. And when I went back and watched the tape of Adrian Peterson, trying to evaluate him in Minnesota last year, it was impossible to evaluate him because their line was so beat up with injuries and their backup guys were just getting destroyed off the ball. Peterson didn't have a chance. And almost every carry he was getting hit in the backfield or dodging people. So you think sometimes, and I know that the Saints fans sometimes will criticize the Saints line. Man, it's a lot worse at some other places.
It is a lot worse. But the real major way to actually get any kind of recognition is if you win. I mean, I don't care how good this is. Let's be honest. Is Teron Armstead better than Jermon Bushrod? I think both of you would agree 100 times out of 100. But Jermon Bushrod went to 2 Pro Bowls.
I know.
Is Teron Armstead a Pro Bowler? Yes. But you got to be good. Mm-hmm. And that's why. Is John Stinchcomb an every-year Pro Bowler? No. Is Jonathan Goodwin? No. Now, is Carl Nix and Jari Evans? Yes. But
sure,
those guys get recognized if you're good. So these guys may be really good, but they're not going to get the accolades unless they're in the playoffs and get better, honestly.
Yeah. Now, TJ weighs in from the Mixler feed about Kenny Vaccaro and Von Bell. He says, how do you guys see Von Bell being used since KV is close to the line of scrimmage and Marcus Williams is more of a free safety? That's a good question. I don't know yet what his role will be. Vaccaro talked today about how he's asked to do so many different things, including cover wide receivers sometimes. He covers tight ends. He's got kind of a joker role in that he is being asked to do a lot of different things. He's not just going to be that guy at the line of scrimmage. Matter of fact, somebody asked him today comparing him to Roman Harper, and he said they're completely different types of players. They're not carbon copies of each other. That he's a little more versatile in coverage than Roman was, and he said Roman was a better blitzer. Remember that one year Roman had like 7 sacks or something like that. And he said he's not nearly as capable a blitzer as Harper. So I think Von Bell then becomes the kind of the big hitter guy, the enforcer. I mean, remember last year he had a couple of nice plays over the middle, kind of intimidating, being the enforcer guy. But I think it's clear Marcus Williams is the rangy center fielder that they wanted Jarris Byrd to be, but he just never quite turned the corner.
Yeah, and we mentioned Vaccaro. He spoke at length the past couple of times we've been in the locker room, so we had a chance to catch up with him a good bit. And I had it when I caught up with Kenny last week. The big question is, all right, contract. What's going to happen with him?
Yeah.
And he says he's not really thinking about that. And basically, I told him what I thought. I said, I don't care where you're going to go. Someone's going to pay for you.
Right.
I mean,
whether it's here or somewhere else.
It's here or somewhere else. And I think that's kind of his mindset. He wants to be with the Saints. There's no doubt about it. But do the Saints want to give up that type of money for him when they've got 2 safeties they could move forward with? And you put Von Bell maybe in that Kenny Vaccaro role and Marcus Williams, and then you don't have to play 3 safeties.
Right.
And I think that's going to be the question. Honestly, I think it's going to be a question even in training camp, because do you want Von Bell being the top free safety in a base defense, or do you want Marcus Williams? You don't have a base with 3 safeties. I mean, that's unless you play that 4-2-5, but I don't. Ultimately, you're not going to do that every time. So I think it's going to be an interesting dynamic how that pans out, because right now I think Kenny's going to be on the field all the time. Now, will that change after this season? Possibly.
Well, yeah, obviously the season's going to play out, and it's going to dictate what happens. Whether Vaccaro has a big year, he has a chance to market himself to another team. I think he would like to be a part of this mix. I mean, he talked today about he and Alex Okafor, they're not just friends, they're best friends.
Oh, yeah.
They work out together.
Both went to Texas.
Yeah, they played together in Texas all those years. They worked out together every offseason. Even when he was in Arizona, they'd work out together. So, that's going to be a little bit of a factor, because I think he really likes having Alex on this team, and he went to bat to get him to come here. But in the end, it's going to come down to how much money the Saints are going to front. But now they have some security and some insurance in case they do lose him. I think they'll be okay. Heck, Raphael Bush is a capable player in this system as well. And so they've got some depth there. I think their secondary, Delvin Breaux talked about it today. I mean, we haven't seen what this secondary can do because it's never been on the field really together except for, one game and one quarter against against the Giants, I think it was. And then P.J. Williams went down, and then it just seemed like every week another corner was going down. So it's going to be interesting. I think it could be a strength of this team if everybody stays healthy. And I'm going to write about this at some point. It's the biggest investment they've made draft pick wise in that area, the secondary, since the early 2000s. You've got, think about it today, the 5 DBs are on the field most of the time. Marshawn Lattimore, first-round draft pick. Kenny Vaccaro, first-round draft pick. Marcus Williams, a second-round draft pick. Breaux, of course, came from the CFL. And P.J. Williams was a third-rounder, but a lot of people thought he was a first-round talent. So they've used a lot of high picks on this part of the defense, and you just hope that they hit on them and get it right because they've been spinning their wheels for a long time at that position.
Jeff, I don't know how this happened, but all of a sudden the comments from days past have popped back up on this thing. I have no idea what I did.
The digital gods.
Something happened, and they're there. And let me go to a couple of questions.
Let's do it.
Nothing like our technical support. Boy, we are tech wizards.
We are, aren't
me
we?
and you. Oh, boy. Anyway, let's go to Love My Saints. Hey, guys, are there any situational pass rushers on the market worth a look, or are we better off with what we have in-house? To me, I think they're going to stick with what they've got. I think they've addressed it enough. And I don't think they're going to have to unless a bunch of guys go down. They're not going to have to scramble for a Paul Kruger. I think they're just going to ride with what they got. And look, even Alex Okafor just said openly, he says, look, I know there's a spot to win with the Saints, and that's exactly why he came here.
Yeah.
And that's right now, there's no reason for me to think that he won't start. There's none. I mean, again, we're OTA, they finished 6 OTAs, but you just look at where he's playing and who's behind him. I don't see anyone right now that's going to challenge him, barring injury. He just is the most experienced, and I think he's probably the most motivated to have a really good season.
I was just going to say that. You took the words right out of my mouth. He's got a chip on his shoulder a little bit because his career has not been what he thought it would be because of injuries. And he stressed to us today that most of those injuries have been kind of flukish, freakish little injuries. It's not like a pattern where his athleticism has been robbed. It's been a bunch of different things each time. But his point is that he's still very fresh. If anything, they're getting a fresh player here, not a broken down player. And he seems excited about being in this new defensive scheme that's going to allow him to do what he does best, and that's get after the quarterback. He said in Arizona he was asked to drop a lot as an outside linebacker, and that's not his strength at all. So we'll see. I mean, I think I'm not going to get my hopes up on Alex Okafor saving the pass rush, but I do think that you do have a motivated guy who knows, similarly like Nick Fairley was a year ago, on a one-year deal to prove it. And if he doesn't do it this year, I mean, he could be in trouble sticking around the league.
Well, and it reverses back. Look, there's another guy here on a one-year deal on the other side of the football, extremely motivated. His name's Adrian Peterson. So the Saints are kind of booking on a couple of guys. Okafor, obviously not to the same level, but they've seen that formula work, and they're going to try to see if they can maximize it.
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to Deuce McAllister at practice today about Peterson, and he was saying similar things about his burst and explosiveness. But he did say something that stood out to me, that he's talked to him and is working with him about getting the ball into his left arm when he runs. He said he does not run with the ball ever in his left arm. It's always in his right arm. And that's kind of peculiar for a Hall of Fame talent like Peterson. But one issue he's had is ball security has been a big issue.
We saw him fumble last week at an OTA.
Yes. And I watched him on tape last year. His longest run he had all last year was a 13-yard run, and he fumbled at the end of it.
Wow.
Because he got into traffic and somebody punched it out. And we all remember what the nightmare NFC Championship game he had here, where I think he put the ball on the ground like 3 times. So that'll be interesting. I'm going to talk to Sean Payton about that next week. Are they going to try to change him? Because we all know that's one thing Sean Payton does not tolerate is the ball being on the ground. I mean, Mark Ingram learned that last year. But it's something to watch as we go forward because that's been an issue with Peterson, and they're not going to allow him to just fumble the ball too often and continue to run him out there.
It's one thing to bench Mark Ingram. Sean Payton bench Adrian Peterson if he fumbles too much. Imagine that.
I don't know. I don't think he ever got benched in Minnesota, even though he was one of the leaders in the league in fumbles.
No.
But it's amazing to me that we need to ask him about that. I'm eager to ask him, is that just something he's always done? He's never felt comfortable with it in his left arm. So that's just an observation that kind of stood out to me today and talking to Deuce. It's something he's talking to him about.
Yeah, let's go to JP, a couple rapid-fire questions. And we've had a couple questions on him. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have a good answer. What's the word on Adam Bighill? How does he fit in the linebacker competition? Maybe play Sam or just Marty's replacement on special teams? I don't have a good read on him. I mean, we've seen 2 practices. They're not long practices. I wish we had. I don't have a good answer for you. And of course, he's this guy from the CFL. I don't have a good answer for you.
Well, I did see him today. He finally caught my eye because he was calling the defensive signals with the 3rd or 4th team at the middle linebacker spot. So that's the one thing that did stand out to me.
Oh, yeah. Well, you were watching defense.
Right.
I was watching offense. Maybe that's all.
But it was the first time I'd seen him. Now, he's a short little fire plug guy. He's like a Sam Mills type guy. Wearing 99, I think, so he's got the cool number. But we'll see. I mean, he's working in the middles, to answer your question. But he's right now behind, obviously, some of the other linebackers on the depth chart.
And then another question. Every corner will eventually be behind Lattimore, Bro, and Williams. That said, in your opinion, where does Damian Swan fall into place? Back to square one because of the missed time? And if it were my call, he isn't above Ken Crawley at this point, although he showed promise. I know one of our reporters, I think it was Josh Katzenstein, caught up with Swan. I know he's going to write something about him. Maybe not today, but within the net. By the time the next OTA comes out, we'll have something on him. I think, personally, he's just got to fight to make the team. I don't think he was going to make the team last year. You mentioned Ken Crawley. He jumped him last year. Even Devontae Harris jumped him. And so Damian Swan's got to make the team. And there's always that intrigue because when he came up as a rookie, he jumped P.J. Williams at the beginning, and then he got hurt, and then now he's dealt with other injuries and concussions and such, and so there's always that intrigue because he's a draft pick, but he's just got to make the team.
I think right now he's probably the 4th or 5th, maybe the 5th corner at best. Maybe the 5th corner because the top 3 are.
I'd say at best.
Yeah, you might be right. I mean, he was working with like the 3rd team, I think, at one point.
I'll just say right now, he's not above, obviously, those
Bro,
3.
PJ, and Lattimore.
He's not going to be above Sterling Moore.
And he's not above
probably
Crawley.
Not above Crawley. He might not even be above Devontae Harris right now.
Yeah, he's probably running neck and neck with Harris. That's how I would put him.
Right.
I think it's an uphill battle for him to make the roster, frankly. Now, there could be some injuries, but that's a position where they probably have more depth than they've had in a long time because they got some of these guys coming back from injury. But he's a guy that I think is maybe among the most vulnerable of familiar names to not make the roster this year.
I'm still saying Stefan Anthony. But,
yeah.
Yes. I'm
But,
not backing down on that. Yeah.
Along with him, but same draft class, right? That 2015 class, we talked about this in the office the other day. They need some of these guys to step up, or it's kind of make or break seasons for these guys like Anthony and Damian Swan that are coming off injuries, haven't been producing that much, but this is year 3 in their NFL career. They're going to have to, or else they're going to get passed by.
You always hear year 3, after 3 years, that's when you grade a draft class. And this will be year 3. And if they don't cut it this year, we know where that class is going to sit, and it's not going to be pretty for a lot of those guys.
Yeah, they haven't got a ton of production out of that draft class. Actually, the 2 guys that have produced the most are Tyler Davison and Andres Pete, of course, the first rounder. They've had more starts than really anybody in that group.
You mean to tell me that you're not going to include Garrett Grayson in that group?
No. Who did not look very good today again.
You mean to tell me you're not going to include Marcus Murphy in that group?
No.
He had 1 return.
He had a nice run today, yeah. He had a nice run, but that class is not panned out like we thought it would.
That's why they made all the scouting changes. Honestly, can we be
Kakaha has had injuries. He hasn't really panned out. But, look, he's going to have a shot. But he's another one. I think this year, if he doesn't produce, he's going to they'll probably move on from him. You only have so long of a window, unless you're just a really, really great talent, to prove yourself in this league, or else you get bypassed.
Jeff, you got a request from Poydras Scalp. Jeff, will you do me a favor? Just once, will you say the Saints are poised to make a deep playoff run? Go. Go. He's asking you.
Well, I would say this. I'm a little more optimistic than I've been in a while.
Really?
I am. I'm a little more optimistic than I've been.
The public's going to accuse me of being you. They're 8-8 until they're not.
I know. Well, that's the smart way of looking at it. I just feel like this team has so much coming back. Now Kenny Vaccaro today was going through the litany of close games they lost last year, and
everybody has those stories.
Yeah, I know. So we were talking to him about it, but I asked him. I said, "You're bringing up all the games that you lost that were close, but you're not bringing up the games you won that were also close, like the Chargers game, and I forget the other.
They had no reason winning that game. None.
Right. So look, they're in the mix just like a lot of other teams. I think with the worst thing that they've got going for them this year is that opening schedule is so difficult. I think they could play well and be 2-2 at best. I think 2-2. If they come out of the first 4 games at 2-2, they ought to be happy.
I'm with you in that. I would probably be more optimistic if that schedule was friendlier, and it's not. It's just not, and there's nothing the Saints can do about it. I think if you're leaving London and that's your second win, I think you feel good about yourself. And you get that long flight home, and you got the bye week, and then you recharge, and you got past that crazy slate, 3 road games in your first 4 weeks, 1 on a short week, and your short week to start the season, and you come home and play New England. I mean, all of it spells bad news. But there's nothing you can do about it. So 2-2 to me, and then they could right any wrongs that they did in the first quarter of the season.
Yeah, if you come out 2-2, you're in it. And I think the division's going to be tough this year. We've talked about that. I think this year is just going to come down to breaks. I think it's going to be so competitive. They're going to have to get some breaks, and they're going to have to stay healthy. I mean, especially some critical positions, they cannot. The cornerback position, they can't afford injuries, and they've got to keep some of these a guy like Terron Armstead healthy again.
I don't think they can really survive an injury at wide receiver.
Yeah, there's not much depth there.
It's a different scenario because last year, if you lost a guy, you still had a 1 and 1A in someone with Cooks and Thomas. And that's a rarity. I mean, that's not the norm in the league, but you had it. Now you don't. I mean, it's clear. Thomas 1, Snead 2, Ginn 3, Coleman 4. Someone comes and surprises us, who knows? But it's a clear hierarchy.
Yeah.
And teams know it.
And that's a really good point because in the 2011 season, you had Colston and Jimmy Graham, who were kind of 1A and 1.
You had Sproles. Now Kamara could be in that role too. But
you're right. I mean, if Mike Thomas were to get hurt, that would be pretty devastating. Because even as good a player as Willie Snead is, he's not a lead receiver in this league.
No.
Not at all. He's a complimentary player.
If Mike Thomas gets hurt, they're in trouble. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and they don't have anybody at any. They don't have the tight end, the dynamic tight end, and yeah, let's not even talk about that.
Then they run the ball 35 times a game. Adrian Peterson.
We'll find out about Adrian Peterson for sure.
Yeah,
but I would say that to me, coming out of today, I was more encouraged than I've been in a while. Just listening to players talk about Peterson and listening to Breeze talk about Ted Ginn Jr. I mean, these are guys in their 30s. You don't know how much they got left. And you and I both, have become cynical over the years because we've seen these kind of guys come in here and they don't produce. I mean, we can go down the roster of the Champ Baileys and James Laurinaitis that have come in here.
Brandon Brown or C.J. Spiller.
Olin Kreutz. And, they were big-name players at the end of their careers, and they just didn't have anything left. I think these guys might have a little more juice than some of those other guys.
Yeah, I think so, because it wasn't like they were coming in and being a struggle last year. Like they were still playing well, and there's a reason why Ted Ginn got snapped up first day at free agency. That's not an accident,
right?
I'm sure another team was they were all in touch with him.
The question that I had, and I talked to Vaccaro about this, is the one question I have about Peterson that makes me cynical is just there wasn't a market. How could there not be a big market for a guy with that resume and that pedigree? There wasn't. So, and the Patriots didn't sign him. And so I still have some questions, even though, man, the hype train is leaving the station. It's amazing.
I am still going to be leery. He could have 150 yards against Minnesota. I'm still going to be leery. We need to see it.
Right.
I mean, that's why you've moved on from Minnesota, and that's why there weren't too many contract offers because, look, I'm sure Adrian Peterson's price was probably higher than when he got here. He had to drop it, and then the Saints probably came on board.
And I do question why Minnesota would let him go. He was such a big name up there, obviously a legacy player, and you've got kind of a shaky quarterback situation there, so you would want to lean on a guy like Adrian Peterson. So why would you be willing to let a guy like that go who's so ingrained in the community?
Who's their guy now? Dalvin Cook?
Dalvin Cook, yes.
Yep, from Florida State.
But they didn't know that when they let him go. So,
no.
So I think there's a lot of reasons to be a little cautious, even though I'm getting ready to write a column about how great he is.
Wow.
Or at least how great his teammates think he is.
Right, exactly.
Because, I mean, this hype train was unbelievable.
I'm sure it will be. Everyone thinks he's great. He could be great. I'm still leery.
Right. That's exactly what I'm writing.
So, ATL blew a 28-3 lead asking, hey, guys, how do you rewind the podcast? Well, we're about to wrap up the podcast. And S97 Fever just answered it, I think only after they post it. Yes. So if you missed any of this podcast, we will post it at NOLA.com. It'll be on our NOLA.com iTunes page and SoundCloud page. And you can go back and check it out at your leisure. So for Jeff Duncan, I'm Larry Holder. Thanks for joining us as we were here at the Saints facility. We will be doing it same time. I would assume same place next week.
Not me, but you will.
I will be. Yes.
I might be able to join you because I'm on vacation, but I think I will be coming out here. So
you'll take an hour out of your day for me
for the pod. The pod's so fun.
It is. Yeah. It is, and that's why we keep doing it. So for you guys, so awesome job. I'm glad I finally got your questions after me being a clown per normal. So again, check it out, NOLA.com. We got tons of stuff coming over the weekend. From Josh, Herbie, Jeff, myself, Amos, Julie, all of our people who've been out here. So check out all that coverage at NOLA.com and in our print editions of the Times-Picayune. So for Jeff, for Larry, once again, thanks for joining us.